Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Will the Washington County Personnel Committee please come to order? I've asked JP Shannon Marty if she would lead us in the prayer and the pledge this evening. Justice Marty.
Can we recite the Lord's Prayer?
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who've trespassed against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, and power, and the glory forever. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Justice Marty. The adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Justice Robert
Yes,
Dennis.
Madam Chairman, I hope we can set aside some time to address the parameters that we might set on COVID care going to the different departments, kind of like what we did for the sheriffs.
Okay, that discussion is item number 9.
Oh, I didn't turn over. Very good.
Okay.
You're, again, way ahead
Well,
of me.
then would you like to make a motion to,
I make a motion that we accept it.
I have a motion to have a second? Second by Justice Evelyn Stafford. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Chairman's report. I'm going to go over the objectives every meeting. My objective as personnel chairman is to bring effective change to Washington County by creating active involvement among the JPs, building positive relationships with elected officials, establishing collaboration and accountability through effective communication and collaboration, encouraging open dialogue and solutions-focused work efforts, and aligning purpose, mission, and goals. With that said, JPs, this month for June, part of our engagement program, you will be engaging our county collector, Angela Wood, and our county clerk, Becky Llewellyn. And their offices are quite different in personnel needs. And remember, our objective is to find out from each elected official how we as a personnel committee can best help support their personnel needs. So that way when budget time comes, we'll have a greater understanding of their office and the dynamics involved in that. Okay, moving on to item number 5, a request from our assessor, Russell Hill, and this is a change, the title of personnel position to Senior GIS Program Analyst to a GIS Manager. Do you want to speak on that, Assessor? Sure. Thank you. Since you're here, we'll just put you to work.
Russell Hill, County Assessor, and this really is mainly just a title change. The person who had fulfilled this position before had retired, and his skill suit was more in the analytical field, and so we looked at what our need is for this position, made a few changes to it, and as we brought it before the Johansson brothers, they requested, or they said a better title for that would be GIS Manager, because they do oversee our GIS technicians. And that's it. There's no change to the grade. It's simply a title change.
Now, this will have to go to Budget and Finance for approval for everybody to understand. So is there any questions for Mr. Hill? I have Justice Rhea Stafford.
Sorry, thank you sorry for speaking out of order. That actually was going to be my only question, is whether this had to go to on to the Budget Committee. Thank you.
And it will. And there's an ordinance. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Willie Lemming?
Oh,
I didn't have a
I'm
question.
sorry.
I was gonna make a motion that we send it on to Budget and Finance.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you, Assessor Hill. Okay. Moving on to number 6. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got 2 different agendas on here. We have a request from our county judge, change in title and grade of 5 personnel positions of the juvenile care workers from grade 10 to juvenile detention officers to grade 13. And this will be also moved on to the Budget and Finance Committee. Are there any questions? His justification letter was in your packet. With no questions, do I have a motion to pass this on to? So moved. I have a motion. Is there a second? Second. And a second. We'll be moving this on to the Budget and Finance Committee. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The motion passes. Okay, then we also have a change of title of Assistant Parts Manager to Heavy Equipment Operator. And this is the same thing. It will move on to the Budget and Finance Committee for approval. I have Justice Lemming.
I would like to know, are we just giving this guy a title because we don't want him as how do you go from a parts manager to a heavy equipment operator?
I believe he has the experience. He had quite a bit of experience on his justification letter.
Well, that's what the road department requires them to do. It kind of, if you read the whole thing, it's kind of like they're a general labor they explain everything.
I'm going to have HR Director Watson.
Good evening, Court.
Thank you, Watson.
The position's been unfilled. That slot's been unfilled for a while yet. The assistant parts manager. And so they have just a parts manager who has been running the shop there. And because they had that slot unfilled, they wanted to change it to an HEO position. It's the same grade as an HEO, so they
So the gentleman that's running, was he as a assistant parts manager, or are you trying to put this changes to a heavy equipment operator?
The old assistant parts manager slot has been unfilled. That slot's been unfilled for an extended time.
Okay, so he wants to add a new slot.
No, he wants to change this one into
Change
an
the title.
HEO position.
So, okay, then he'll be able to fill that as a heavy
With an
equipment
HEO. That is
heavy
correct.
equipment operator from there on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Justice Lemming. Are there any questions? If not, do I have a motion? Oh, Justice,
I move that
Dan.
we pass recommendation to the Finance Committee.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Item number 7, a request from the Circuit Clerk Kyle Sylvester, a change the title and grade of personnel position of Deputy Circuit Clerk 1, grade 10, to Deputy Circuit Clerk 1, Administrative Assistant, to grade 11. And this also will go to Budget and Finance. And his request for these positions, if y'all see his justification letter, it does not change or add an additional open slot to the budget. And we have Mr. Sylvester here if you have any questions. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor? All opposed? This motion carries. This will be passed on to the Budget and Finance Committee. All right, agenda item number 8. And this is a discussion on amending ordinance 2016-68. And this is a part of engagement also, is non-committee members can bring something, an item up to personnel that they would like to discuss. And so Justice Wilson has done that, and I'm going to recognize Justice Wilson. Oh, I'm sorry, Justice Madison, did you have a comment about something?
Yeah, I'm just a little slow in making my comment, but, and it's not really a comment on the substance, but on the juvenile care workers, is it really right that grade 10 to grade 13 goes up 2 cents an hour?
We're looking at that, yeah.
Okay.
We're going to be
'Cause I was
looking
like,
at
well,
that.
there's something really wrong with our grading system, because there's not even room in there for 11 and 12.
I know. What, we have on July's agenda, Blair Johansson is going to have a robust discussion with us on changing the structure, what happened in 2016, and the processes of time and position and whatnot. So that way we make sure that it's not just a 3 cent or an 8 cent.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too
Increase.
excited if I was told I was given
Yeah.
a 2 cent an hour increase.
Right. So
Okay.
we're going to be looking at
Just
that.
wanted, but I also want to make sure that wasn't a typo. It's correct? It's what it says in the memo.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. Now, Justice Wilson,
Shall I speak from here, or should I move over there?
you can speak from there.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman Ecke and members of the Personnel Committee. I'm here to raise the issue of pay for our countywide officers. As a county, we've accepted the guidelines of what to pay them found in 1414-1204. In 2016, the Quorum Court adopted a system of starting a newly elected officer at 80% of that amount and over 8 to 10 years, moving them to the recommended amount, going up around 2.5%. It was originally written to go up 5% for a 2-year term period, and I think that it's just morphed into 2.5% per year. I brought it up to recommend that the committee either take all officers to that recommended level for their position, or that the elevation period be conducted over the first 4 years of their first term, such that they would begin their second term at 100%. J.P. Madison led the effort to change what we did back in 2016, and I'm sure that the officers appreciated that change. And many other elected positions are paid what the recommended amount is, like legislators get what the pay is that is passed by the legislature. And so I'm just making that recommendation that we talk about, or that you talk about, the Personnel Committee talk about, perhaps modifying that to where they either move, again, immediately to the maximum amount, or that the period that it takes place is over just 4 years. I've got to believe that at the beginning of their second full term, they know what they're doing if we go that route. Thank you.
Thank you. I have seat number 13. Is that you, Justice Madison, or is that Justice
I don't know.
I think
Wilson?
she's the one that's lit up, so.
Okay.
So are you.
Oh,
Oh.
sorry.
I was just going to offer a little history on this.
Okay.
For those, I know J.P. Ecke and J.P. Pond, and some will know, but historically, the elected officials were sort of like an afterthought in terms of what to pay them. So the state sets a minimum and a maximum depending on the grade of the county we are. And so we are the highest level county. We're a class, whatever that is, 7 county. So we are paid, they say, if you're a class 7 county, this is what you pay your elected officials in this range. And it's a pretty decent size range. And when I started off on the court, we were in the process of elevating classes. We went up a class, and that also resulted in us going from 13 JPs to 15. But we would discuss employee pay, and then it was like, oh, well, what are we gonna do about the elected officials? What should we do about them? And it kind of became like this political hot potato. because you're there at the very end of the budget process, and then it's like, they don't want to come forward and say, hey, could you guys give us a raise? And so the sheriff had come to me and proposed this kind of lockstep thing that would just make it so that it wasn't such a political hot potato every year, that it looked like we were trying to, like, say who gets a raise or whatever, and we had just done this phase-in process based on years of service to just try to get there to be some regularity in pay, so that it wasn't a hot topic every year. I do know that the county judge and the sheriff are paid a little more than the other elected officials, but otherwise, everyone else is the same in that range. I think historically, we'd even paid something like we generally paid like 85 to 90% of the max, and so we weren't paying in the max. We can't go over the max, but the min and the max do change year to year, so you have to account for that budget-wise. But I do agree that it should be sort of a lockstep process, that it shouldn't be that we say, well, let's just not give them a raise this year because we don't have money in the budget. I think it should be something that can be kind of expected for the work that they do, because they are elected officials. So just give you that little history that why that ordinance is where it is.
Thank you, Justice Madison. I think at that time you were also the AAC representative. Yeah, okay. Is there any other discussion? I have Justice Ussery, seat
Thank you.
number 20.
We probably also ought to look at updating this to the 4-year terms, because now many of these guys have 4-year terms.
They all have 4-year terms, I believe.
I think it was. I think we did it in a budget control.
Did we do it in the budget controls? I think it was,
Yeah.
that didn't
Mr.
change,
Sylvester,
though.
remember, it was
It
like
was?
we really had trouble with the math, and he had to rewrite it for us.
Okay.
He did change it in practice, so I'm not sure with the lack of codification of the ordinances where it was, but we did change it, because it was right after we passed it that we moved to 4-year terms, and so we had to do it, but we did it.
Okay,
I just am not sure where it is.
we'll find it. Okay. Is there any other discussion on this amending the ordinance? Well, or just your thought processes as to. Oh, on another topic. Stay focused. We'll get there. That wasn't nice. I apologize. Is there any other discussion regarding the slot? The first one was the two recommendations. Could you please turn on your mic? Okay, so the first option is to take everybody to the max.
And the second option was to elevate them over a 4-year period. So if they started at 80%, they would go up 5% per year, such that when they began, if reelected, and they began their second 4-year term, they would then be at 100%.
Okay. Does anybody have any preference to the first recommendation or the second? I know we're going to have a full discussion of this. Okay, I have Justice Stafford.
Yeah, the second one, the second option sounds okay to me at this point. I'm just hearing these options for the first time. And I as with everything, I like to hear, feedback from the public and feedback from our constituents and things like that, and maybe even feedback from, the elected officials that this is going to affect. I don't want to put y'all on the hot seat. I know some of y'all are here right now.
I don't think you'll hear from them.
Yeah, okay.
They're,
Don't worry about it if you don't want to step up. But I did have just a clarifying question to Justice Madison as well. So are we saying that you think that that this has been amended in a subsequent ordinance, possibly?
the question was to Justice Madison.
and Mr. Sylvester can help me remember this, because I know you don't remember when? You wrote it.
It wasn't amended, it was just taken care of in the budget.
It was in a
Yes,
budget
it's in the
control.
budget controls.
We tweaked
And
it in a
it is
budget
in the
control.
budget controls right now,
Yeah.
presently.
Yeah, and a
It-
budget control is an ordinance, so it
Yes.
just basically had the effect of amending this. And then
Right.
it was never codified, just because we haven't codified since then, I don't think. So it is addressed in a past ordinance,
Just this
That it-
past year, yeah,
yeah, that it was adjusted to deal with 4-year terms
Right.
instead of 2-year terms.
right. Okay, I have Justice Lemming.
I thought the state of Arkansas set the county judges' pay.
What they do, they set a minimum and a maximum depending on,
So
Oh,
the
so-
state of
so the
Arkansas
amount.
sets all of yours, like she said?
they put the range.
Sets the range and range wide.
Right. And then we decide whether or not, if you're gonna start out at the minimum and work your way up to the maximum. And that's part of budget controls.
But this is not, their salaries are not in the budget.
Yes,
They are?
they are.
The state tells us what to pay them, and then we have to budget that for the state. Cool.
Just like everything else,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Well, not everything.
Well, not everything, but, go ahead. An unfunded mandate, yeah. I'm just gonna throw this out there just for discussion. Doing the minimum, maximum range is what is in our budget processes now. What would the pushback be if it was, this is what you're allowed to be paid, maximum? What would the pushback be if we were to say, that's what they're gonna get paid? Just for a discussion. Who would oppose somebody getting paid what the state said, this is how much you can pay your elected officials? What would be the reason for not paying them the top salary? I have our Vice Chair Pond. I'm gonna turn this off so you can speak.
I think the bigger the county, the more that there is for them to manage, which we are one of the larger counties, might have had more to do with the way the legislature set this up and had it in mind that our elected officials would be paid accordingly to the size of the job. I wouldn't have any problem with just paying our county elected officials the maximum. Just going by the size of our county and our population.
And the job?
I'm trying to make friends in high places,
I can
of
tell.
course.
But, I mean, what would be the oppositions to say if the state said you can make $15 an hour, or whatever the amount is? What would be the oppositions to the court saying, no, I don't think that's something we want to do?
Could you say that again? I didn't hear it
If,
correctly.
if the state said, you just say, I'm just gonna just use $90,000 as your maximum pay, that's how much you can pay your elected officials. What would the opposition be to not paying them $90,000 for the job? And I have Justice Hires. Thank you.
I mean, I'm not saying that this is what I would say, but as a school teacher, I train my students to always be able to answer the opposition. And so think about what the opposition's going to say. And what I can see being said is that the issue would be something about available funds and what we have to budget and whether or not we actually have the dollars to budget for that, as well as budgeting for all of the other things that we need to budget for.
Personnel increases.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And that's one thing we're trying to, as Personnel Committee, when we look at structure and rates and whatnot, if we can have a 60% of the county's revenues, which has always historically been personnel, 57 to 59, 60%. If we can stay within that target range, can we do what we want to do increase everybody and bring everybody up to where market value should be for that particular job. So if we could afford it, if revenues are there, there wouldn't be any opposition to it. But you need to be able to have some leeway to say, we can, we can't. So therefore, that's why we put the steps in there. Okay, Justice Robert Dennis.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. I remember being on the court back a few years ago too, and when I saw this for the first time, I thought it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Not the suggestion that J.P. Wilson's doing, but the way we did things. I thought, I'm running for judge, and then I find out when I run for judge that I'm only paid 80%. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, if that's what it paid, and then we say, well, how come we can't get anybody better to run for judge? Well, we don't pay them. It's like other county employees. We just try to hold back as much as we possibly can. I'm all for it. J.P. Wilson, thank you very much for bringing it forward.
Okay. Any other discussion? Justice Madison?
Thank
Okay.
you. There is a restriction on being able to change it once someone's elected. We can't change it after the election if we just decide we don't like who's elected. So there is some
Correct.
timing there to make it not political. What do we know what the min and the max are right now? I mean, the state doesn't set a number, it sets a range.
Right.
And the idea is that each county finds what's comfortable and appropriate in that range. And so I think before we just decide that everybody's gonna get 100% or whatever, I think we should know what the ranges are. And I don't know that we know what they are right now because they change every year. So that means that every year we're gonna be going up. Okay, Jim has them. For class 7, that says 218? Oh,
See,
is
and that,
2018?
that would be a
It's
great question.
$125,000.
If I can, Justice Madison, that'd be a great question to bring up during budget and finance.
Yeah. Well, I think it would help people know if the max is 75,000 or 150,000. I just think that kind of goes into it.
Yeah, and we all need to know.
So, I mean, I do think there's something to be said for rewarding service, and we don't have any way to do it with the elected officials. And I think that as hard it is to run and get elected, I think that I would hope that they would want to improve as they go, and we could say thank you as they go. Otherwise, we can't. So.
That, I have Justice Stafford.
Yeah, so one of the things I think I'd like to research and find out is what are our comparable counties here in Arkansas doing? How are they doing it? How is Benton County doing it? How is Pulaski County doing it? And just kind of figuring out, what they do with this. And then in terms of just sort of anticipating what, the feedback might be in the arguments in one direction or the other direction. On one hand, I think that, the years of service and the years of expertise is one argument to go in the direction of doing the steps. But then an argument going in the other direction would be possibly more regularity in the budget process. So we're not, that's one less increase that we're building into our annual budget. So I can kind of see potentially those arguments in either direction.
Mm-hmm. And we always must remember to keep it non-political. We're doing this because this is the right thing to do. Okay. I have J.P. Esri. I had your name down. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that the reason this is the way it is because it's based on experience. Because the first year somebody comes in, it's a learning curve for them. And you take somebody that's been here 4 years, they're doing things that are being heard across the state. But the first year, they're just trying to learn how to run the office. And so that's how this, that's one of the reasons it's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a consideration. And like everybody else was saying, I think that this is incentive for them. It rewards them for improving. So, and then by the time you get to the maximum, then, which most people in this county obviously are at the maximum level already.
Yes,
So,
some of them.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
But see, then that gets into who governs how well their job performance is and who's not. I mean, do we do the report card, huh? It's the voters. And, okay, if the voters elected that person in office, then do they get paid what they get? But to determine how well they're doing in the meantime, I'm just looking at it from every angle because this is a discussion we will be having. And the more robust conversation, I think the less time we'll spend at the quorum court, and we won't go to 10:15 at night discussing this. And just understand what do we see and what do we want for Washington County. You know, these are our options. Option A, pay the maximum, or option B, do a step. So that's something to consider. Is there any other discussion on this topic?
The only other thing I want to mention, and if JP Madison would straighten me out if I'm wrong, we're currently doing about 2.5% per year, and option B would be to do 5% per year, which would get them to 100% within 4 years instead of a longer period of time.
That sounds very good. And you will be bringing this up at Budget and Finance, correct?
Well, we
Okay.
started here and.
Sure,
and
this is just the discussion
Right.
that, yes, we're having a discussion about our personnel in Washington County, but there's no, nothing needs to be forwarded out of the committee. And I wanted to show my appreciation for Justice Wilson to bring it up and ask, you know, do I bring it up in personnel or do I just go straight to Budget and Finance? And his decision to bring it to personnel and have a discussion, let everybody have a discussion and be aware of this is what's going to be taking place at Budget and Finance. What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? I think it's fantastic. So it's part of our objective as this committee. Thank you. I have Justice Lemming.
So after 5 years, what are you gonna do for them? So after 5 years, you're maxed out, so if you've been here 15, 20 years, you're just gonna get your 2% or 1% every year the state allows?
That's
So-
governed by the state. Mhm.
So then, from that point on, we'll just have to rely on the state to tell us what to pay, basically.
Well, I have Justice Madison wants to make a comment.
They also get like a extra multiplier for APERS, don't you?
I have a puzzled
That was
look on their
fewer
faces.
years.
I think it's 15.82, we're at 17.82. I'm not sure what that really means, but we do have a different percentage.
Well, and I think that then they retire at the higher rate too.
That has
Right.
to do with longevity.
Yeah, anyway, I mean, so
Yeah.
the system is a little more favorable to elected officials than to ordinary employees in terms of retirement.
And, yeah,
But you're right. Once they hit the max, it's only the state can raise it.
right. Okay. All right, thank you. We're going to move on. Justice Robert Dennis just had to leave. He said there was an emergency. And he asked that the COVID bonus pay be discussed for other employees, possible employees, that was paid out just recently. On setting parameters, if we wanted to look at other employees that might be eligible for COVID bonuses for their job during that time, what would the parameters be and who would be included? And what does, what does that look like? So he had to leave, and just based on my discussion with Jay Cantrell, just really getting to know why did this particular group get paid? And you're talking about those that were in the jail. That is their job description. I mean, they had to be at work and they were interacting with known positive COVID cases. They were incarcerated in this small pod, although they had to wear all their garb and going on, didn't they? They were being exposed to positive cases every day because they had to perform their job. That is, for me, in my opinion, someone that was on the front line, like a healthcare worker, a nurse, a doctor that has to treat their patients there at the hospital. Emergency services, people having to go out. I haven't spoken with the coroner. So, okay, that's good. But we also wanted to put the parameters of from maybe March when it first hit, and all of these changes and modifications were taking place, and the spread of it was rampant, to the end of maybe May, when we finally got a handle of, okay, this is what we're seeing, these are the precautions we need to take. Who were those employees during that time that were what we consider in the front line, doing their job, carrying out their day-to-day responsibilities, and being exposed to COVID, like they were at the jail? Who would be eligible for that? So those are some parameters. So if anybody else wants to discuss those parameters, we certainly can. I have Justice Fleming.
There's, Central MS, which you're not a paid employees, but.
Yeah, they were a part of what the
okay,
the
they're
governor.
there way before the police has to.
Yeah,
put up
well, no,
with it.
but the governor provided for them. I mean, there was funds for that, from what I understand. Who was not included were the people at the jail.
And, about every employee the county's got had to put up with it some way, shape, or form. Just like the guys at the road department, they shut the road department down 3 or 4 times, had to go home. And their families had to deal with it once they got home. And so, I mean, you can say, I understand what you're saying about the jail, and they're forced to hold their hands, because that's what they gotta do down there. But, if we're gonna give raises to some of the county, you're gonna give it to all of them. That's why I voted against it, because it needs to be fair. We're not being fair.
Well, the thing is this is COVID-related money.
Well, it's all COVID. It's all
I
COVID
know,
related.
but
We've been in
there
a
are those-
COVID pandemic for almost 2 years.
Okay, if you're a firefighter and you're the one that has to go into the house with your axe and whatever, and you're the one that goes into the fire, and yet there's the other one that just drives a truck. There's a
takes both
difference.
of us to get
I know
there.
it takes both of you to get there, but there's one that's putting their life on the line, going inside to put out the fire.
I've done it for 40 years. You gotta have more than one. It's kinda like a football team. You can't do it with
And
one.
you need bench warmers as well, right?
Do what?
And you need those reserves.
You gotta have
Okay.
all. It takes all.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to? I have Justice Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think at a minimum, we have to include the coroner's folks, because I just feel like they were just a big miss with the first ordinance, and they're just such a small group that I think the financial impact would be small. So I'd like to see that. As far as the other parameters, I tend to lean with JP Lemming, and here's why, is that to say that somebody who came and had face-to-face contact did more than the person that had to work at home, I think we start getting into really difficult decisions, and that's because a lot of the people who had to stay home were women who had to stay home because the children were suddenly at home without childcare, or who they had virtual school. In addition, I know there were some individuals who are immunocompromised who had to stay home because of health conditions. So you get into a situation where we're starting to make decisions that could have an impact, not intentionally, but have an impact, which is illegal, on females more so than males, or on those with health and disability concerns more so than healthy folks. And so I think if we start saying, oh, well, those that volunteered to come, greet the public in the assessor's office, they're the ones who get it, as opposed to the one who may be in remission for cancer that had to stay home because of the health risk. I think that's a decision that's difficult, that I don't want to make. I think that all of us in some way, we may not have been dealing with the situation at the jail, and maybe the difference is that the financial, we sort of set that those that were truly frontline at the jail and in the coroner's office and at JDC get maybe a little higher bonus than everyone else. But I think that if we're gonna start trying to parse through who we think, did the most, I don't wanna do that. I think that's gonna be really hard to do. I think that's gonna make a lot of county employees resentful, because I think the pandemic has been trying for all of us and for all of them, no matter what the circumstances were. So whether it was the person that greeted the public, face to face in the collector's office versus the one who was answering phone calls with a child on homeschool at the same time from home, it was hard for everybody. And I don't think that the folks in our elected officials in our departments would say that, just the ones that were here made the difference versus the ones who were able to do it from home. So I would like to see, if we're gonna do it, that it's an equitable solution, and we don't start picking and choosing, because I think that worries me. And if we can figure out a way to say that it's part of the COVID money, I'm not, it seems like that would be a good use of it. So I would just like to see us reward and thank everyone and not start picking and choosing, not only because I think of the equity issues, but because of the concern for suddenly we're gonna have an impact on those who are disabled or those who are women.
Oh, yeah,
Thanks.
I don't think we would discriminate based on those metrics. I really don't think we would do that, at least not on my watch. I have justice hires. Y'all are popping up as seat 20, seat 12, seat 3. So it's hard to decide who's seat 20. Okay.
No worries, thank
Justice
you.
hires.
I was just going to share with you how this was handled at the school districts. We received a bit of COVID money as well. And what happened in the school districts was everybody got a bonus, but then they took a look at contract days, student contract days. So for every day that I showed up to work face-to-face with students, there was a multiplier on my bonus. So the teachers that were teaching virtual, they got a smaller bonus than the teachers that were showing up face-to-face. The teachers that only took 5 sick days got a little bit of a higher bonus than the people that took 35 sick days during the school year. I don't know what the right or wrong answer is, but just to
That's a good-
show
that's-
how other groups have kind of handled it.
Yeah.
So, it's just,
And that's good to know, not being a school teacher.
Yeah.
And what others are doing. So that you had contact days, you had Zoom days, and then you had those that didn't, and it was just that multiplier of what they did. Any other discussion on that? I have Justice Wilson.
I was just going to say, I supported what we did with the sheriff's office and JDC because, they were in the jail, they were in a confined area, they had to be directly exposed to people who had it. I certainly agree with what JP Madison said about needing to include the coroner's office because, they were handling deceased individuals who, in some cases, had it. Many did. I am unaware of any other departments that had any really, really direct touches like those two. Certainly, if there were and we just don't realize it, that would be something to look at. But that's why I supported what we did before, because those folks did have to be there and they did have to be directly involved.
Thank you, Justice Wilson. And I too supported it because I saw them as frontline. But I also wanted to, when I shared this at the Budget and Finance Committee with Chairman Deakins, I supported it, but I wanted to engage in conversation and discussion about the whole thing. So that way nobody will feel dismissed or disregarded or overlooked in any way regarding this. So I think we've had some very good discussions. Justice Hires, thank you for offering up that school district solution to what they did, and Justice Madison, Justice Wilson also. Justice Esri, did you speak with the coroner? If you would share that?
Yes, ma'am, I did, and the coroner said that he's handled 100% of the cases, COVID cases in Washington County. He said at the very beginning, he set up protocols to completely disinfect the body, and so to remove all of that from the hospital or any of the family or anything else, he took care of it right then. And he has worked extremely hard during this.
Yes, he
The
has.
hours have been crazy. They've really put in a lot of extra effort. And I think we all need to be aware of that, and we need to, make sure that we let him know how much we appreciate all he's done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Justice Essery. Great discussion. Is there any other discussion? We have 12 minutes set aside for public comment, 3 minutes for each individual to comment on the agenda items.
I'm here for someone else.
You're carrying a proxy?
I am.
I recognize, who is,
I'm Beth Koger from Fayetteville. She is with a relative out of town that dealing with a family issue, and she wanted me to bring to your attention. I think she talked to some of the JPs, but it's not an agenda item, but it's something that won't have an agenda item for forever, and county ordinance doesn't require that it be an agenda item, but it's the condition of the courthouse annex. Apparently it's had very, very bad flooding damage from the roof, and there's ceilings falling in. She was over there visiting someone in the public defender's office, and there's a storage room with extensive damage. There's mold and mildew. Their client files, 100 of them have been damaged. Anyway, the concern is, she says it's very dark and smelly, and people are working there, and the mold and the water issues are getting really bad. Apparently, they've been told that they're waiting on the insurance company, and Ms. Coger's comment was, I think the county needs a new insurance company. There's been just really nothing done to mitigate it. She has pictures, if you'd like to see them. She'll be happy to share them with you by email. The elevator has been out of order for several months, which is not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so there's just a lot of concern. She was concerned, having been there, just with the smelling and seeing the mold and mildew in a workplace, that we haven't really done anything to make sure that that's better. And that's also the building where we've got Judge Warren and holding juvenile court. So she asked me to bring that to your attention so that you could be aware of it. If you'd like to see pictures, she'd be happy to share them with you by email.
thank you. Any other public comment? I have Assessor Russell Hill.
This would just be, just kind of give you a little insight on what we did during COVID for the COVID bonus pay. And I'm glad it went to the jail and to those folks, so I'm glad that they got that. What we did is we kind of went by the CDC guidelines, and so parents, male or female, if you had a child who was 12 years old or under, they went home with pay until they could get their situation with the virtual learning, because there was a lot that they had to go through with that. So we kept track of everybody's hours, where they were at, and what they were at. If you had certain susceptible illnesses or an age, we set an age level too, again, set by the CDC guidelines, and people that fell in those categories, they were sent home with pay. If you had a child 12 or under, you were sent home with pay. And then we pulled everybody from our outer offices in the DVD. We pulled everybody into the main office here, and that's where we worked. So we personally, the assessor's office, when the stimulus checks started coming out, everybody seemed like they were buying cars, because our assessments in personal property went up 29% over the previous year, because our phones were ringing off the hook. So we were operating at about 33% capacity, because we had people that were at home with their children, helping them. We had other people who were either susceptible or at a certain age, and so we had them as well. And again, we made that all their offer. You know, it was your option. You can do this, or if you want to come. And we actually had some who, oh no, I'm going to kill my spouse if I stay home with them all day. You know, so they were there working. But we kept track of all of that in hopes So we had 33% people working with a 29% increase in workload just on the personal property assessments. Phones were going crazy, and it was a pretty stressful time there. Not only that, but I think everybody just, what are we dealing with? You know, it was the invisible war that was taking place. But we kept track of each person, where they were at, what they were doing through that entire time, in the hopes that if there was some leftover money at the end of the year, that those people who were there doing double time would maybe get something, and then those that were home, you know, and that's for you guys to decide. I just wanted to give you a little bit insight in the way that we handled the pandemic when it was going on in our office. And so it wasn't a male or female thing. It was, if your child's 12 or under, boom, you get paid. If you fall within these guidelines, it's automatic. And then who we had left is who we had left. And then we saw that major increase of people just buying vehicles. So, and I'll answer any questions if you have any, but that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you.
So then people had to carry the extra weight.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
That's what the whole county employees are.
yeah.
You need to turn on your mic.
We
and
just
be
didn't want,
recognized.
and for us, we knew that we needed to keep the county moving, you know, because if you can't assess your car, you can't tag your car. If you can't tag your car, you can't drive it, and then why'd you buy it? You know,
That's why I
so-
say it's all one team.
Right, yep.
But could I ask, was it 1/3? You said 1/3 of your staff?
It was about, we had
carried all
about
that?
33%
That
that we
carried all
brought
that.
in. And at first, we tried to split it to where we had half working 1 week and another half was home, and then we would rotate that way in case there was an outbreak. It wouldn't take everybody out, but we couldn't handle the workload. It was just, we were just getting bombarded, and we learned, that was, I think, the very first day we tried that, we had, look, I'm sorry, I need everybody that's not in one of these categories. And then we did have some, eventually, we got to the point to where we had some that worked from home as well. And then we had some that just stayed home and were paid, so. But we did,
But they
we
were
got
paid,
it all
right.
tracked, and who, what, how many hours, how long they did what, and everything.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Great discussion. Great discussion. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Nobody wants to leave? Oh my, it's a slumber party.
So moved.
Motion is second. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Good discussion.